Hello and welcome to the Small Business Sweet Spot. I'm your host, Barb Davids, and this show is dedicated to helping small business owners like you get more organic website traffic, and also to help create and distribute content and analyzing the numbers so that we can make better informed marketing decisions. It is action-oriented, direct, and conversational. I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. This week's episode is with Amber Fuhriman. She is a recovering perfectionist and serial accomplisher, helping professionals design their best life and have the courage to live it. Attorney, author, podcaster, speaker, success architect, NLP master coach, and NLP certified trainer. She is the author of the book Break Your Bullshit Box, where she discusses the excuses we have relied on to justify holding ourselves back and how to break the bullshit box those excuses live in. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Small Business Sweet Spot. I am with Amber Fuhriman today, and we are going to talk all kinds of good stuff. I don't even know how to describe it, so I'm just going to say, hi, Amber, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, and sometimes I don't know how to describe it, which probably affects results. Like, it's such a unique conversation, so.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know we went back and forth about like what topics we were going to cover, and I had a couple questions too, just before getting on here, looking through your profile and everything. But first and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. So I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I always enjoy these conversations.
Yay, good. All right. So one question that stood out to me that I saw on a profile, because I use the pod match and trying to find guests for the show for my listeners. And one of the questions that were on there that I was really interested in is, how has being uncomfortable helped you to where you are now, or helped you in the road to success? And I thought it was interesting, just the whole being uncomfortable part.
Yeah. So starting off with a nice light question. I like it. So really, uncomfortableness is such a key part of what we do every single day. And because we're not in the same environment that we were generations ago, where we were literally trying to survive on a day-to-day basis, we don't relate comfortableness the same as we used to. So a lot of times when we experience any type of fear or uncomfortableness, we will find ways to chalk it up as being busy or not having enough organization, when really what it comes down to is we are avoiding things that make us uncomfortable, and we're justifying it based upon our busy schedule, or I'm not that type of person that can do that, or that's for somebody else. So when I talk to people about this idea of comfortableness, I stumbled across it by accident because I was in the middle of an identity crisis. I was in the middle of figuring out which direction I wanted to take my life after law school, and building my career didn't create the freedom that it was supposed to. And I was still confused and had trauma. And, it was being somebody that grew up in the 90s, was born in the 80s. That time, the rhetoric that we were told in school was get a graduate degree, get a good education, have a 401k, and life's going to be nice and peachy. And that's just not the way that it turned out and worked, because I got all of those things and I still had fear and trauma and pain and abandonment and all of the things that I thought I was going to outrun. And in the process of trying to figure out what my next steps were, I ended up finding obstacle course racing. And it was the parallels between pushing myself to do things that scared me in an obstacle course racing environment that started to create parallels to where I was holding myself back in business. And I would find myself being afraid of something and saying, well, Jesus Christ, Amber, if you just jumped over an 8-foot wall and you did a 30-mile race and you did, a 24-hour race, or all the things I was doing at the time, you're telling me you can't make sales calls? It became, being uncomfortable became this thing that the more I would push myself physically, the more I would start to relate to the places that I was holding myself back mentally.
I like that a lot. How many races have you done?
Yeah, so I haven't done any recently. 2016, 2017, I did 27 races and ended with a 24-hour race.
That is amazing. Holy crap.
It was fun. And I miss it. It
Yeah,
just but there comes a point in time where you wonder whether it still holds a part in your future. Like I don't want to put my body through that at 42.
yeah,
So I would still do the weekend warrior stuff, but I travel and speak and there's just so much that's going on that I wonder whether I want to go through the training of putting my body back through that again.
yeah, yeah. That's a great question, right? What do you do right now for a business? Let's share with everybody what your business is and maybe how you got to this point, and then we can jump into the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I have two different businesses. One is scaling down and the other is scaling up. So I own and operate a law firm, which is scaling down, where I practiced criminal defense and immigration for 14 years. And I'm scaling up a business coaching and consulting and sales and communication training company. So, through the sales and communication and business coaching company, we use NLP or Neuro-Linguistics Programming, which is behavior based science and understanding of how we communicate, how we show up, how our life experiences have dictated the way that we see the world, and how our values have programmed us of what we think is possible and not possible and how we can adjust that to have the results that we want to have in our life and business. So, in both of those, I spend a lot of time with people with their excuses in different areas and genres and different practicalities. As a criminal defense attorney, people were excusing their conduct all the time. As business owners, people are excusing their conduct all the time. The only difference between business owners and criminal defense attorneys is there's no handcuffs waiting for you based on the conduct. There's no profits, right? You're not
Right,
making the sales calls. You're not doing the networking. You're not showing up the way that you need to. They don't have the same consequences as the people that were in my criminal defense practice, but the excuses are the same. And that I think is one of the parallels that I had to really come to terms with is it's so easy to point out where somebody is making excuses and stuck in a victim mentality when they're homeless or addicted to a substance or facing criminal charges. And you can look at them and be like, dude, you're making really bad life choices. But when the person runs a successful business and they're holding themselves back from that next opportunity for growth, or they're holding themselves back in their relationship using many of the same excuses that my clients used in my law firm, we don't always see that as what it is, which can very often be a victim mentality.
and so is there a particular, like, what mistakes or what things people say to themselves or business owners that we could talk about, or how does that translate?
Yeah, let me go here and then we can go from here wherever you want. So, I did a I think when it comes to business owners and the way that they show up in their business and the way that they communicate and operate, it's so easy when somebody has a level of success to ignore the things that are driving that success. And many times the things that are driving success are the same things that drive addiction and things in my criminal defense practice. And one of the best examples of this was I was doing a podcast interview with a good friend of mine now. And if you take our identities and you strip them apart and you look at just the dots that mattered in our upbringing, there were so many parallels. We both lost our dad at a young age. We both had a history of suicide in our family. We both were the oldest of three children. We looked like the same person. We're almost the same age. If you took our identities away, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between us.
Mm.
But he was a recovering drug addict that also almost spent a significant part of his life in custody. And I was an attorney. And people would look at me and they would say, "You're so successful." And they would look at him and they would say, "Man, like, what did you do for all of those crappy life choices?" What they didn't understand is that the pain I was outrunning by being incredibly successful was the same pain that he was outrunning with drugs and addiction and a life of crime. And this is what it really comes down to when I work with people in coaching, communication, and sales is that every single person that we communicate with wants something because they think it's going to solve a problem that they can't identify yet.
Mm-hmm.
So they might say, I want to work with you because I'll make more money. What they never get to is that if I make more money, then maybe it won't hurt anymore that my dad left when I was a kid. Or if I make more money, then maybe I won't feel like I don't bring enough value because I was programmed that a husband supports their family and I'm not supporting my family right now and I feel worthless. So if I work with you, then maybe I'll make more money. So we as business owners communicate and sell to this surface level desire, which is I want to make more money, without getting to the underlying reason that they think more money is going to solve their problem. And
Mm.
this doesn't just apply to us talking to our prospective clients. It applies to us talking to ourselves. So when we're saying, I need or want to increase my sales by X amount, why? What do you think that extra money is going to do for you or create for you? And until we get to that level of conversation of I want this because I think it will do X, Y, and Z for me, we can't solve our problems or anybody else's.
Mm. If somebody were to ask that question of themselves, what do they do with that then?
Yeah, so I think that the most important question that we can ask ourselves when we are running into this challenge of being intentional with our time and our choices is understanding the purpose for our actions. And that's what I actually invite my clients to do is whenever they set a goal, I invite them to get very, very specific on the purpose of that goal. So if somebody comes to me and says, I want to make $1 million in 2025, well, what's the purpose of that?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to get an answer. And what's the purpose of that? And they're going to get an answer. And eventually they're going to get to what most people refer to as their why it is that they want this. It's also important to acknowledge that we can't solve a problem we created with the same mindset that we created it with. So at some point in time, you need an external viewpoint of somebody who's not involved in your story but is invested in your success. So when you try to go it alone because so many people think they need to reach a level of success before they can tell anybody what's going on in their life, you hold yourself back. So whether it's a coach or a mentor or a business partner that you trust, it's so important that you have external perspectives as you're going through this process, but understanding the really deep purpose for all of your actions creates a level of intentionality that'll affect your results.
And how do you help your clients stay accountable?
Yeah, so a level of coach that will push back on your excuses. It's interesting that you're asking this now because I was talking to somebody who said I might have a referral for you, but she's afraid that you'll be too in her face for
That's the
her.
point of being a coach.
And I said, because she says I was having a conversation with her and she says, I really like Amber and would love to talk to her about coaching, but I'm afraid she's too in your face. And I said, well, I am, but only when you're bullshitting yourself, right? Like only when we're talking about these excuses that are holding you back, or you're saying that you want something and your actions aren't following that. So when we set a goal and we say we want it, if there was no barriers to accomplishing that mentally and emotionally, we would take action and we would accomplish it. So the people that I talk to that say, like one of my most frustrating things I hear in this space is if you wanted it bad enough, you'd have it. It's not that simple. There's stuff that goes on in our mind that we have not yet been trained to acknowledge that affects how far we'll go after it. So when somebody sets a goal and they're not taking the steps to accomplish it, the first thing that I go to is what was the purpose of setting this goal? Was it something that you wanted? Or was it something that you set because your husband or your spouse or your mom or society told you that you should want? Because if it's not your goal and you don't really want it, you're never going to go after it. You're never going to hold yourself accountable for it. So, first of all, whose goal is it really? And do you really want it? And the perfect example of this is the first time that I hired a nutrition coach to work with that I would set these nutrition goals and we'd work a little bit. And then I would go through drive-throughs for Jack in the Box and I would throw away all my progress. And I remember, I had done the mindset work related to self-worth and protection and all of the reasons that we hold on to weight sometimes. And she finally looked at me and she said, Amber, do you want to lose weight or do you want to lose weight? And I said, I want it. I said, I don't want it because if I wanted it, I'd do it. I said, I want to care enough to lose weight, but I don't right now. And she says, well, until you want it, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do to make you go after it. So there's this space where people say, I want to make more money. There's a fantastic book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck that talks about this, where it talks about the different, like we need to stop asking people what it is that they want when they grow up. And we need to start asking people what it is they're willing to work for. Because people will say, I want to make $1 million. Well, do you want to do what it's going to take in order for you to have $1 million business? Because if the answer to that is no, then you don't want $1 million. So I always start with whose goal is this? And then if I know it's their goal, they're congruent with it, they want it, then we start getting into more of the yummy mental stuff. What's the programming? People don't realize how they've been programmed as a kid affects how they show up as an adult. And there's this fear that gets triggered in programming because our unconscious mind is meant to keep us safe. So perfect example, if someone says, I want to make more money, I want to make $1 million next year, but they have a program in their mind that was written because mom or dad became successful and then a divorce followed shortly after that. And somewhere in their head, it got programmed that money causes relationships to fail. And then this person is in a happy marriage and says, I want to make $1 million. And every time they reach the point where they're about to make more money than they've ever made before, this program that they don't know is running in their head says, but wait a minute, the last time you knew somebody that was successful, they didn't have a happy marriage. And you can't have both. So then they stop making sales calls, they stop networking, they stop doing the thing. And it looks like a lack of accountability, when what it really is a programming issue. So we get to the bottom of the purpose for not taking actions that support goals that you say you want.
Okay. Question.
Yeah.
First of all, I do resonate with this a lot. I think the whole wanting to want is a very strong statement. And that whole scenario is a really great example. There's like the idea of wanting versus intention. So do you work for it? I think there is a definite, like, you want to do something or you intend to do it. Like there's a clear line there. If somebody finally realizes that they are making the excuses and they can't really pinpoint I'm asking for a friend. If they can't pinpoint the subconscious. Now, I have been diving into this quite a bit, like in general sense. So I'm curious to know what you think about how, like, there's meditation, there's all kinds of different things that you can do to reprogram your subconscious. But how do you suggest people, is it just that? Like, how do you know, like, if I don't know what that trigger is, like, let's say that is to be a millionaire or something. That's not my dream, but let's say that is. If I get to the point and I'm almost there and then something happens and my subconscious says, nope, you can't do that, but I can't see that. How do I bring that up to know that?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And the answer is you can't do it alone because Les Brown has a quote that says you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. And so if you think of the frame as this, like, not see-through solid box that prevents us from seeing the world outside of our problem. So we have a problem. And that problem is every time I get close to making 7 figures, I pull myself back. We can't see what's outside of that problem, which is where somebody who's trained in reprogramming and human behavior comes into play to start asking the questions that will get you to think differently, that can tap into that unconscious part of you. So much of what we do on ourselves is this conscious reprogramming. You know, they say that it takes 21 days to create a new habit. So you've got to put the work in for 21 days. That is a conscious reprogramming. Change happens in an instant, and it's the moment that you decide you're ready to change. And that normally happens through either intentional work with somebody who can work with your unconscious to help you reprogram by reframing. So what we do, and I know this is getting super nerdy, what we
Okay.
do is we use visualization exercises to help people identify the moment they made decisions and choices, and then help them create different meanings for the events so that they no longer mean restrictive things. So it's a guided type meditation that identifies the moment we made decisions and then reframes that so that they no longer see it as a limitation. You can't do that on your own, because what happens is your conscious mind, which is designed to keep you safe, says, wait a minute, we're not going to go there. We're just going to keep talking about all of this.
Right.
So what happens is people create things like 75 hard. They create things like 21 days to make a habit. They create things that are very conscious of like beating into you a new pattern or habit. And eventually you change, but it's like this completely uncomfortable, difficult fight the entire way. It's like fighting with a toddler to get them to clean their room when they don't want to clean their room, right?
Right.
The other way that change happens is naturally. And there's a quote that you may have heard that says that you won't make a change until the pain of making the change is less than the pain of staying where you're at. And that's the natural reprogramming that happens, is we stick in our problem until the pain of being in that problem is so strong that we don't care about the pain of making a change.
Mhm.
So those are the ways that it happens naturally. The thing that people are so surprised about when they do coaching or come through training that's NLP based is how unemotional and non-traumatic emotion and trauma work should be. They're always afraid that they're going to be put in these situations where they're going to have to remember all these horrible events that happened that created the programming that they have now. And I always tell people that if it's super traumatic, painful, and emotional, then pain and trauma work's being done wrong, because it shouldn't be. So it's just this visualization of having somebody that can help you identify when you made decisions and help you reframe what they meant so that they're no longer problems.
Okay. So did we talk about what NLP actually is?
I think briefly, but I don't think we did in depth.
Okay, let's go into that.
Yeah. So if we break down NLP, so it stands for Neuro-Linguistics Programming, and NLP was created originally by two therapists who were tired of their talk therapy not producing the results they wanted it to, where they were seeing clients come in month after month and year after year with the same problems and no solutions. And they wanted to find a better way to create shift and change. It's used in a lot of different avenues and careers. I choose to focus on it from a business perspective. So I work with business owners to help them make more money, have more work-life harmony, have better relationships. There's people who use it in like a life coaching aspect. So it's used in a bunch of different ways. If we break down the word of neurolinguistics programming, it really comes down to those three things. Neuro, your brain, how it's programmed, how you see the world. For those of you who are either insurance agents or attorneys, or you deal in communication in any way, parents, this is a big one for parents, you know that you can line people up, show them the same event, and you will get 10 different answers from 10 different people about what happened. So when you've got one child that's coming to you saying, Mom, this happened, and another one's coming to you and saying, Mom, this happened, and you're like, which one of you's lying?
Right.
Neither of them. They just remember different things about that event based upon the way that they see the world. So the neural part is understanding how our brain works, how we see the world, and how those programs were created initially, how we were programmed. The linguistic part of it is the language we use. The words people use to describe their problem will tell you so much about the problem. And I always tell people when I do my intake questionnaire, I know you're not going to understand these questions. I don't need to know what you think. I need to know how you think. So the answers you give me to these questions are going to tell me how you think so that I can best help you get the results through what it is you think. So understanding the language that we use, and I'll give an example. I was talking to somebody today that said, I want to lose weight. This is how much language matters. If we're talking to somebody that says a goal is I want to lose weight, when was the last time you ever lost something that you didn't want to find? So when we use a word like lost, what it tells our unconscious mind is, oh my gosh, we've never lost something that we like. Nobody's ever had a problem that they hated. And then they're like, well, I'm glad I lost that. I'm glad I got rid of that. I'm glad I finally threw that away. I'm glad we use a more permanent word. People use the word lost for things like I lost my keys. I lost money in the stock market. It's always these things we're sad about losing. So then why would we ever use a word that relates to something that we're sad about losing to describe wanting to lose something that we want to get rid of? So when I work with people that have health goals, the first thing I tell them is don't use the word lose. Find a more permanent word that resonates with you. So for me, I want to release, or I want to throw away, or I want to destroy a certain amount of pounds. So we change the language that we use to create different results. That's the linguistic part of it. And then the programming part is exactly what you and I were talking about before. When you have a limitation that says, I can't make money, or when you have a limitation that says, I am not worthy of being in a relationship or a business, then how do we go back to where that belief was created and create a different belief around that event?
What's one thing that somebody can do? And so they processed all this answers and they had all these questions. What's one thing that they can do that might set them on the journey to start being aware of this?
The first thing is really just intentionality. I can't use that word enough. Understanding everything you do. So I have a couple of things. I have a free giveaway that they can go grab from my website, and I can give you the link for that. That is a starting point that I start with all my clients that helps them define success for themselves and then approach creating it through an intentional action plan. I'm also getting ready to release a planner called the Break Your Bullshit Box Planner. And it's based on quarterly goal setting that's all based around intentionality. So to give you an idea of what it looks like, when I do my daily planning, my weekly planning, my monthly planning, everything that goes on my planner and on my calendar, from the sales calls I'm going to make, the networking events I'm going to go to, the gym time that I might have, or the self-care time that I might have, I know what success looks like to me in each event that's on my calendar. I know if I go to this networking event, success looks like meeting 3 new people and being able to follow up with them. If I make this sales call, success looks like being able to either end with a sale or end with the next step where we can communicate the next time. I know when I go to the gym, success looks like, whether I'm doing weights or cardio, a certain amount of work being put in. I ask myself every single morning, what needs to happen in order to make that day a success? And at the end of the day, when I'm doing my evening routine, I reflect on the day and I look at what happened that made it a success. What happens is people go on autopilot through their day. We talk about all the time people saying, I woke up in June and it was December and I didn't get my goals done. And we've all been in that place where we just don't know where time went and we can't get it back. So the only way we can make the most out of it is to make sure that every single thing that's on our calendar has an intention for being there. And when I first started going down this route, it sounded like so much work. And I was so surprised at how free I felt because I didn't have to question where my time was going to go in the day. I knew what I expected to get out of every single day. And when you have this type of intentionality in your day, then you have a freedom that you've never experienced before. If you have family that comes into town and they say, I want to spend time with you today, what normally happens when that happens? we sit back and we say, oh my gosh, what are the things I've got to get done today? I knew that I needed to get these 10 things done. I can't take time to spend with my family. Look at everything I've got to get done. But if we knew exactly where we were going to spend our time that day, we could easily say this task could be done on Thursday. This task could be done next Friday. We could say, I have to do these 3 things today. So if I can get those done in the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes, then I have the rest of the day that I can spend with my family guilt-free. If we don't have that level of planning done, then all we get is overwhelmed with guilt and tasks and expectations every time we go to take time off to spend with our family. So it creates a level of freedom that most people aren't used to.
Fantastic. I love it. Okay, so that's what they can do. And out of all of this that you were talking about and sharing with us, what is the one thing that you hope people walk away from this episode with?
And understanding that you don't know what you don't know about what's going on in your head in your life. It's easy to chalk it up as it's just the way that I am. I would encourage you, if you're not reaching your goals, to start having conversations with people about what could be preventing you from reaching those goals, because you don't know what you don't know about success. You don't know what you don't know about how you're holding yourself back. And I am somebody who used to think that I could do it all on my own. I'm somebody who used to think that I had to have all the answers figured out before I could go ask somebody for help, because I didn't want to look stupid, or I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing, or I didn't want to, like, I just would look at people and think if they knew how messed up my life really was, they would think that I was a total basket case. Why would anybody hire me? Why would anybody work with me? And it was opening up about the things that I had experienced that caused people to get drawn in to actually want to have a conversation, because they're like, oh, she doesn't think she's perfect, right? Mm-hmm. So realizing that everybody's human, you can't answer these questions on your own, because it's like rewriting a book that, like, it's Groundhog Day. Right. If you guys have ever seen the movie Groundhog Day, that's what we create. The mindset you have today will create the exact same tomorrow for you, if you don't have a different viewpoint to be able to help you create a different tomorrow. So be willing to talk about what you're going through, and know that nobody knows what the hell they're doing. We're all figuring it out as we go along. Everybody's human. And you deserve to have somebody that you can talk to about the areas that you don't feel like you're meeting your full potential.
Fascinating. Good. Everybody take that away. All right. So now I know you have a podcast, you have a book, and you have all kinds of resources. Please share so that somebody can take the next step.
Yeah. The podcast is the Break Your Bullshit Box podcast. The book is Break Your Bullshit Box. Are you sensing a theme here? The podcast originally started with More Than Corporate. And when we published the book, we rebranded it to Break Your Bullshit Box. And what that really stands for is an understanding that we all have a box full of excuses that we hold on to keep ourselves safe. And that we get to destroy those excuses to be able to reach the potential we want to have. So the book lays out some really cool resources. There will be the planner coming out soon if anybody's interested. And the podcast kind of ties it all together. So all of those resources can be found on my website.
Great. And then what's the website URL?
It's successdevelopmentsolutions.com.
All right. And we'll make sure to put those in the show notes. So thank you so much, Amber, for taking the time to be here and share all of your information. I'm so grateful for your expertise and everything that you shared today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And that wraps up this episode for helping your business thrive online. We will see you in the next sweet spot. Cheers. Thank you for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're looking for SEO and content marketing help, you can find all kinds of information at compassdigitalstrategies.com. And if you like the episode, please tell a friend. Cheers.